Good afternoon. We're here back on the Annandale Way in Dumfries and Galloway. Today we're going to be walking from the small town of Lochmaben, which has had a turbulent history over the centuries, along seeing a few of the sights on the way and finishing up here at Almagill Hill and Joe Graham's monument. It is a there and back walk, but we would recommend that you take a slightly different route and take the roads on the way back rather than through the countryside. We'll show you why later. Let's go.
Lochmaben has been inhabited since ancient times, owing to its fertile land and position on trade routes. Today's walk visits its history from hill forts through to the present-day town. From 1160 the Bruce family became lords of Annandale and possessed the surrounding lands, later building its first castle. In 1447 King James II declared Lochmaben a royal burgh, giving it additional trade and monetary advantages. Many battles were fought here throughout the wars of Scottish independence, owing to its position.
Lochmaben's beautiful town hall was originally built in 1627 as a toll booth and court. It fell into disrepair and the current building dates to 1723, with many further improvements over the centuries to create the fine building we see today. A statue of Robert the Bruce stands outside. The town hall now houses a library and council service point.
The largest of Lochmaben's 5 lochs, Castle Loch, is popular for fishing and sailing. The walk here takes in natural beauty through wooded areas, wetland marsh areas and a wooden sculpture trail. It's home to a selection of bird life, including several species of geese and ducks. For a shorter walk around 3 miles, you can walk around the loch itself.
While Lochmaben's original castle now lies under its golf course, this later castle was built next to Castle Loch by King Edward I at the end of the 13th century. Despite its impressive defences, It changed hands between the English and Scots a number of times due to the many battles fought in Lochmaben over this period. Its earliest capture was by Robert the Bruce in 1306 and the last by James VI in 1588. It was in use until the early 17th century, when it was gradually abandoned following the union of the crowns. This middle section of the Annandale Way across the fields here is one of the more boggy and overgrown sections. Struggled a bit today, battled the way through, and it's worth it to see the wildlife. So we've seen a heron and a deer calf on the way through. A bit too slow to film them, unfortunately. And now we're back on the road. So by all means, come through this way, but I would recommend, like today, on the way back, take the road. It's a bit easier.
Hightae is one of Lochmaben's royal 4 towns, with land entrusted to soldiers by Robert the Bruce after the townspeople declared their allegiance to him. In return for provision of food to garrisons, this brought tenants rights such as farming to the fertile land and fishing in the nearby River Annan and Loch Hightae. Rich alluvial soil for farming reflects the meandering path of the River Annan through the Annandale Valley. The town hall runs a number of activities for the community. Although remains and documents show the land has long been occupied, the early history of Rammerscales is patchy due to the turbulent local history. The current sandstone mansion was built in the Georgian period and styled by Dr. Mounsey. Dr. Mounsey previously worked as a doctor for the Empress of Russia, and when he designed his home, insisted each room have more than one door to facilitate an easy exit from any enemies. This magnificent family home faces out onto a view over the Annandale Valley and back towards Hightae.
The old farmhouse at Holmains was built by the Carruthers family, who also owned Rammerscales and surrounds from medieval times. Rammerscales was gifted from the Holmains estate in the 17th century. To the south of the farmhouse are outbuildings and the remains of a medieval tower. This tower was the first building here, but was abandoned when the family moved to the farmhouse. The lands became a barony in 1542 by a Crown Charter. Due to a banking disaster in the 18th century, the Carruthers family sold much of their land around Holmains. Although it's now derelict, there is still farming in the surrounding fields today.
Range Castle and Moss Castle forts are Iron Age hill forts to the west of the Annandale Valley, sitting close together, suggesting strategic importance of the site. The visible ramparts and ditches show the commanding position on Almagill Hill above the river valley. Range Castle sits to the north and covers a hilltop, with an outer enclosure 120 metres wide and two smaller enclosures further up with impressive ramparts. Moss Castle fort lies around 500 metres south on a higher area overlooking Range Castle. It has one large irregular enclosure 200 metres long and is left unfinished.
The high point on today's walk is Almagill Hill, which sits 217 metres high and holds the trig point as well as the unusual pyramid of Joe Graham's monument. Joe Graham was a huntsman for the Dumfriesshire foxhounds who died in 1893, and the monument was built soon after. Views from here extend across the Annandale Valley and also to the Solway Firth in the south.
There has been a creamery on the Priest Dyke site for over 100 years. It's perfectly sited to process milk from cows from surrounding farms eating grass grown in the rich soils of the Annandale Valley. The modern Lockerbie Creamery was opened by Queen Elizabeth in 1975 and produces butter and cheddars. Arla have recently invested to extend and expand operations here for generations to come.